Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We welcome you once again. Wednesday nights with myself, Inayet Wadee, and as we welcome our listeners, our viewers at Salam Media. Now, with the first hour of the show, we are going to be focusing on the Gujarat massacre that took place in 2002. Now, there are many reasons as to why we shouldn't be forgetting this massacre that had taken place because it's 20 years ago, but we've seen the state of Gujarat, where large parts of the state were seized by one of the most gruesome communal massacres since India actually became an independent country. Now, these killings were exceptional not just for the numbers, but for the ferocious brutality that had unfolded, the ruthless targeting of women and children. There was mass rape, sexual humiliation of women in public, battering, burning alive of girls, boys, women, children, babies, and all the other damage that was done to the property. And over and above that, it is now, in fact, it's come to the fore with the Indian Independence Day celebration, where a number of these people who committed these gruesome rapes were actually acquitted. And for many of you who have been following social media, the case of Bilkis Banu has featured very, very prominently. And the man at that point in time who was the chief minister was none other than Narendra Modi. And as the gruesome images were flashed right across the entire world, this is now the same man who later became the prime minister and obviously achieved two successive election victories with the BJP. And this is what we are going to be focusing on tonight and looking at India, looking at the country where it is at this point in time, particularly when we are talking about minorities. We're talking about the Muslim minority in particular. And with us tonight, we've got Sheikh Umar Sharif, who is out of India. He's been no stranger to the airwaves of Salam Media, president of Discover Islam Education Trust, DIET. And also we've got the CEO of the South African National Women's Forum. We've got Shamshad Sayed. Sheikh Umar Sharif, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
And also to you, Sister Shamshad, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Jazakallah for your time, and absolute pleasure having you with us.
Jazakallah wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and your esteemed listeners and viewers.
Yes. Now, just to give our viewers an idea, we're going to play out a video clip. And this was the release of these convicts that took place on Independence Day. So before we get to discussing, just to give our viewers an idea as to where we are taking this discussion, we just want to play out this video clip, which is quite a short video clip, and we will then get straight into the discussion points. Well, I think we're going to try and see. We're going to try and get hold of Sadiq to obviously play out this this point. But Shamshad, you obviously sent me this video clip, and as a result, we are having this discussion tonight. And I painted a brief picture with regards to what had unfolded, and looking at what had taken place 20 years ago, and how things have actually evolved in India over a period of time, particularly under the Modi government. And just to paint some sort of a picture and a background to where we are taking this discussion this evening, Shamshad. If you could please unmute your mic, Shamshad.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I'm saying 20 years later, in the age of technology and the full glare of the international media, we see that India has gotten worse, much worse. I think we can rightly say we're in the making of a genocide. It has started long ago, because if we look at the elements of a genocide, there's a proven intent on the part of the perpetrators to physically destroy the national, the ethnical, the racial, and the religious group of Muslims, which constitute about 200 million of the populations. That's 4 times the population of South Africa. So that's not a small number. It's the largest Muslim minority in the world. I think even this population is twice the size of Pakistan, which is a Muslim country. So having said that, we find that the components of a genocide are real. You see the killing, and number one, the killing of people, the causing of serious bodily harm, the causing of mental harm, the prevention of births, forcible transference of children out of the group. And the victims then are targeted, Muslims in this case, are targeted for being members of the Muslim community. There is a genocide in the making, and if the world has not taken attention, now is the time. You know, they are facing all sorts of social, political, and economic exclusion, and there's basically no future for them. I'm reminded more than 20 years ago, Brother Inayet, when I went for Hajj, we were sitting in Delhi Darbar, and there was a family from India with us. And I remember the look of consternation on the face of the father when he said that there is no real future for Muslims in India. He said he has actually told his children to either move to the UK or USA. I mean, that's unfortunate. These are Western countries, but he feels they would be safer there than in the motherland, because already then, this is before 2002, before the Gujarat massacre. But even prior to that, in 1979, believe it or not, Brother Inayet, I heard a radio interview in South Africa where someone from the BJP party, this time they were canvassing to come into power, was saying, we as Indians are no longer lambs, we are lions. And we know our history, it was stolen from us, etc. So these were already rhetoric that was quite dangerous, especially targeting the Muslim and Christian communities. When we speak about the massacres that's taking place, it's not only against the Muslims, it's also against the Christians. I've seen a video of a young Christian girl who just came out from the church, and she was burnt alive by the community that she lives in. And there was no headline about it whatsoever. So I'm afraid that it's not just the structures of the state that's now in power that was responsible for the Gujarat massacre, but it's also the strong arm of the media, and perhaps now even with the release of these 11 perpetrators of rape and genocide, that the judiciary may also be implicated in the atrocities against Muslims and the genocide against Muslims. And it's very worrying, because if you can release on Independence Day, and that's such an oxymoron, on Independence Day, you release those 11 convicts, and they're nothing short of it, murderers, rapists, and convicts on Independence Day. What are you calling your Independence Day? Is it from Muslims? What is the future of Muslims? Is this the kind of justice? Is this the kind of India that you want to see? And you know, India has, by historical terms, has been a very hospitable country. But as I said, if you tie the dots, if you join the dots from 1979 onwards, and you look at the rhetoric that has been coming out from people and those vying for power and are now in power, it is terribly scary to fully understand or grasp the magnanimity of what is intended by the so-called perpetrators of these crimes. You know, we regard in Islam the honor of a woman is extremely sacred. Even in South Africa, there's not a Muslim country. We understand the month of Ramadan, the sacredness of it. But you will find that as past Ramadan, there were huge numbers of atrocities committed against Muslims. It's basically silent as the genocide of Kashmir is, which has been carrying on from 1987. And it continues till today, where 10,000 plus women have been raped, 100,000 plus orphans and widows. So what number are we looking for it to decide it's a genocide? Because what's happening in Kashmir is now moved to Gujarat, is now moving to the south of India, it's moving to all parts of India. Today there was a report of a minister in one of the areas of the Rajasthan area that was proud about killing Muslims, very, very proud about it. And if we as civil society and humanitarians do not talk about it, I don't think governments of the world are going to. I'm also reminded of one reality. When I visited Mumbai in 2017, the first thing I saw coming out of Mumbai airport was, and this ties in with world history and geopolitics of the region as well. I saw in a very safe, protected hangar, El Al, Israeli Airlines in a coveted hangar. So there is also the kind of genocide that's happening in Kashmir and now being spread into India is also it's witnessed in Palestine. And as atrocious, if not worse, because I'm going to say it as loudly as I can, we don't see the kind of rape in Palestine, but we're seeing it all the time in Kashmir, in India. So this is very worrying because for me, it's more brutal than what's happening in Palestine. This is definitely the Palestine of the Himalayas and now spreading to the rest of India, which, as I said, was once a country full of hospitable people, as well as the governments of the time, whether they were Muslim, and there were far more Muslim leaders in India than there were any other nationality. And the RSS, or whatever you want to call them, we need to ask who created them. This is not generic to the Indian people. So all these things tied up, this is a cultured and developed kind of genocide that is being nurtured by all those in power, all the strong arm of the media. I mean, it's been supported by, and all the quiet about it. When you are silent, as Desmond Tutu say, when you are silent about atrocities, you are part of the genocide. You are part of the brutalities as well. So this is just a wake-up call from my side as a woman to say what we're seeing in Kashmir, and people were silent. There were few voices talking about it, but what's happening now in India is something that you can't be quiet about. We're watching, and in the full glare of international media and humanitarian cause, I mean, for what do we have the World Health Organization? For what do we have the United Nations Organization? When the plight of Muslims socially, medically, economically, religiously, educationally is far, it's been taken to the ghettos. So it's something that we need to talk about, and I'm glad you took on this challenge because that video really stirred something in me, and I share it with you because I know, Inayet, you're unafraid to talk about the oppression of people, whether irrespective of caste, creed, or nationality, you bring it to the fore. So shukran jazeelan for that.
Yes, we've got the video clip ready. We're going to play it out before we get to Sheikh Umar Sharif.
Namaste. Yesterday, on August 15th, the Independence Day of India, 11 convicts were given remission by the Gujarat government. These convicts raped Bilkis Banu when she was 6 months pregnant. They killed her daughter, who was 3-year-old, by smashing her head to the ground. And they also raped the rest of the family members, women, her mother, her sister, and they all were left for dead. In fact, some of them were murdered by them. 7 of her family members killed in front of her. This is the story of Bilkis Banu. And these people were let off remission by the Gujarat government. Where is justice here? In fact, by the central government's rules, remission cannot be given to rapists. I want to know today if Prime Minister Modi is in the know-how of what the Gujarat government did yesterday. Did he know about it? Because from the ramparts of the Red Fort, he said, I want to give suraksha, protection to the women of this country. How is he going to give protection when his own party are releasing rapists? Is this Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao what he spoke about? Or is it rapist ya balatkari ko bachao? Narendra Modi, you need to answer to the nation, to the women of this country, if these rapists are going to be roaming free, if these killers are going to be roaming free. We need answers. Jai Hind. Namaste.
Yes, Sheikh Umar Farooq, to bring you into the discussion and just looking at the video, and clearly, one can, when one looks at emotions, one cannot hide the emotions. We're talking about a woman who was 6 months pregnant. We're talking about a 3-year-old child. We're talking about the most brutal forms of rape, humiliation that Bilkis Banu and her family had basically suffered. And again, questioning the fact that these are people that have been released by none other than Modi government and the Modi government, and under whose watch as chief minister these riots had taken place. And this is where these unspeakable crimes were committed against not only Bilkis Banu, but many women and children in 2002.
Yes, you have identified most of the scenario as to what's happening here in India. I need to give a larger perspective as to what is happening because I live here. So, like I said, even earlier, I used to tell you that India has got so much of diversity. It's not just one kind of culture from the north to south or east to west. We have so many tribal communities. We have so many urban and rural areas and different kind of political, organizations working and social system, languages, thousands of languages. You understand? So it's very vast, and we cannot say based on one incident that India is, very hard for people to stay, or we cannot say that India is going through the stages of genocide, although it was, given as a warning sign from a lot of people, experts in the field. But what I want to say, yes, there is a possibility in certain places. I don't deny the fact that there is a possibility of genocide in certain states and in certain, specific places where there are time and again incidents of turmoil where you find people having skirmishes based on differences in ethnicity and religion. So that's which is true. We do agree with the fact, but it is not to be understood that the entire Indian subcontinent is going through the same situation. That's what I want to bring into your notice. Second thing, what we have to understand is that within the remission law, within the constitution, under the Article 72 and 161 and Section CRPC 432 and 433A, there is a scope for people to be freed after they serve a period of 14 years. And this is a debate between the people of law. Some of them, they say that the rapist can be included in this clause, and some of them say, no, it is not possible. And this is a debate which is going through. But if you look into this case itself, out of the 12 members, one of them died in the prison, and 14 years of stay in prison has completed. So technically, the government of the state has got the right to free whomever they want. But in this case, where the horrific incident of 12 members raping and brutally killing, so the public conscience is very clear, saying that how can such monstrous people can be led away so easily? So that is the public conscience, which also includes the majority, that is the Hindu community. A lot of people from amongst the Hindu community and the media is also reacting against this release. We have to understand that people are alike when they come to see. Like, for instance, if you see an accident on the roadside, the first instance is that you want to go and help that person, whoever is fallen down. So this is the human nature. So this human nature is prevailing amongst all the communities. But I'm bringing to your notice, why is that there's so much of hatred against the Muslim community? What is the narrative which has been time and again passed on to the masses, the gullible ones, for sowing the seed of hatred amongst these men? So two things I want to bring to your notice. One is the Mughal rule, which is depicted as a rule of tyranny by a lot of people, wherein the Muslims, they went and killed a lot of Hindus, and they had taken a lot of Hindu women into their harem, and they took them as concubines. And this is the kind of narrative which has been fed into the gullible people, which is building in a sense of hatred. So when they're having a sense of hatred, and that's the point where they are willing to justify the crimes that they are going to do. So they say, this is something we are giving you back. We have been oppressed in the past, so we are giving you back. This is one thing. Second thing is what happened during the partition, when Pakistan separated. From then, there is a problem in India with regards to, we have given you a state. We have given you a state, Pakistan, that is a Muslim state, and you had asked for the Muslim state. So why are you still here? This is the kind of mindset a lot of people are having, and they have a sense of insecurity that Muslims, wherever they are, once they come into a number wherein they have a good size of number of population, they demand for an Islamic state and they would rule this land. So this is the kind of fear. And based on this, they are able to move ahead with their agenda and to create a kind of unrest in the society so that they can control this land. So this is where we are, and we have to be very careful in dealing with the situation, because we cannot play the games in a whimsical manner and we cannot do things in a reactive manner. We have to be very careful with every action, because we need to calculate every word that we utter and everything that we do, so that the repercussions are limited and the benefits are enhanced. So this is what I have to say about the recent observation, and I'd love to hear more from both of you, inshallah.
Yes, Sister Shamshad, we hear what Brother Umar Sharif says, but again, when one looks at how the momentum has moved as a result of the massacre, 2002 massacre, where Muslims have become marginalized, and it does appear as if the Gujarat, the Godhra, or the
Brother
post-Gujarat
Inayet,
violence.
sorry, I just want to respond to Sheikh about what he said. Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate his point of view, but exactly he's fed. The narrative is feeding exactly the elements of a genocide. The intent on the part of perpetrators to physically destroy a national, ethnic, or religious group, whether it's cultural or something. It's not just cultural, because people are being physically being killed. So what he said about the narratives that are being fed, that is exactly what I'm trying to say. This is the making of a genocide. These are the elements of a genocide. And the components of the genocide is basically killing or causing serious bodily harm, which you are seeing, mental harm, preventing, based on a narrative. That is exactly during the time of Nazi Germany as well as during the time of Stalin's genocide. There were people, for example, there were Jews who didn't believe there was a genocide in the making. And then when it happened, it was too late for them to leave. Those that understood it left. But obviously, you can't expect 200 million people, Muslims from India, to leave. But the fact is, you need to be conscientized about it, aware of it, and whatever steps to be taken in the future, as he said, perhaps to guard what they're saying. I don't know if that's the perfect solution, but I think it is to address it from a very constructive judicial point of view, using the rights that's already enshrined in the Indian Constitution, which I believe is the largest democracy, which they can use what's in their constitution to fight against what is happening, or what is prevailing, what is intended, or whatever narrative is being pushed. So I just want to make that point, that narrative that he mentioned about bringing, vilifying the Mughal rule and vilifying the partition. These are historical facts that was done with the international community. It was done the people of both countries. At the end of the day, if that narrative is pushed, it's feeding the elements, and it is the components of a genocide. I think people of India need to be made aware of that. And as I said, people in Stalin's Russia also didn't believe there was a genocide in the making until they were sent to Siberia. So we need to understand that history is a lesson. We don't know where we're going if we don't know where we're coming from. And we know we've seen this repeatedly in history, the rhetoric, the actions, the killings, the mental and bodily harm, the forcible destruction of life and property. These are all components of a genocide. What we are saying today is people need to be made aware of what is really going on. And we understand fully the vice grip or the pincer grip in which the people of India are, so they can't talk out against it. But you have at least, weapons in your hand, which is your constitution. This constitutional right gives you the right to fight against the injustices there. And one of the things in South Africa we did when there was a sort of staggered genocide, was to get people in the anti-apartheid movement, people for example, in South African context, in the white community, in the professional community, to tell them, this is what we need your help, because this is what human rights is all about. And this is hard work. You cannot be complacent and say it's going to work itself out. It's not going to work itself. And the answer is not being in silence. The answer is not only guarding what you are saying. The answer is working at grassroots level with your community, in your case, the Hindu community, and looking at social media alone and some mainstream media, you have a lot of friends in high places, in civil society, philanthropists, humanitarians that can come to the rescue of fighting for genocide, because it is the right thing to do. So yes, there are quite a few Hindus, and there's also a video that I sent you about Hindu people talking out against the killing of people who were transporting beef, for example. So there's a lot of things that and I think this platform I'm going to use to say there's a lot of history lessons we can take, political history lessons, social lessons we can take from the battle in the struggle in apartheid that assisted in the destruction, the dismantlement of apartheid in this country to bring about democracy in 1994. But I think as Muslims, there's something else that we have, and it's the power of prayer, which is the biggest form of faith. All I'm saying is we need to be aware of it, and we cannot sweep it under the carpet and say this is the narrative and this is the same way that people said you can't talk about Kashmir, it's part of India. And this is a myth, just like how they said that Palestine is a land without people. It's also a myth to say that Kashmir was part of India. It never was. It's a historical reality, and that's another discussion. But right now we need to understand that what is happening, and especially by mentioning the narrative that's being pushed about the Mughal emperor and the partition, these are actually elements of a component, because they're pushing a narrative and they feel justified in doing it, which is not justified. And using the constitution in your country, the rights that you have enshrined in your constitution, you need to get people in your communities from other faiths, for example, to come to the fore and talk about that this is a very dangerous rhetoric that needs to be stopped. And you can only do it as a collective, as we did in South Africa. And there are many other ways, using professionals from other, faiths and religions, etc., using people of different political, there's so many political parties, it's trying to interact with them and canvassing with them. So it's a lot of hard work, but you just have some pointers that you can use in getting to the attention of people in India to say, this is not how you should be thinking.
Yes, Sheikh Umar Sharif, I think Sister Shamshad has raised some very, very important points, but also some critical questions as far as, as you mentioned, that, possibly, when one looks at the genocide that has unfolded in Gujarat and also in other areas where the suppression and the oppression of Muslims are taking place, they could be in certain areas, they could be confined in certain areas. But just looking at the reaction right across India. And I think this is very important for us to understand, because, the narrative that Sister Shamshad speaks about as well, where we're talking about a government that has been given a license to do as they please. And we've seen what has happened post-Godra as well, where we've found, an increase, and especially with the BJP, with Narendra Modi serving 2 terms in power as well, that, this is becoming institutionalized, where minorities like the Muslim communities are persecuted in more ways than one. And also when looking at the legal system, they are basically looking at a legal system that is backing the government, and also looking at legislations that have been passed. And we know some of those laws that have already been passed, and not forgetting what they've done to Kashmir about 3 years ago.
You have brought out, it is an alarming situation, and we must say that 1991 and then 2002 in Gujarat, and 1991 in Babri Masjid, that was in UP, Uttar Pradesh, and then 2013 once again in Uttar Pradesh, that happens to be in Muzaffarnagar. But these are the main incidents which we can recall of, wherein the Muslim community was massacred, and at certain pockets. And we can also recall even before that, soon after the independence also, there was a massacre in Hyderabad. So there are many incidents that we can talk about. But what I'm trying to get at is, there's something which is much deep rooted here, because 1984, the Sikh community was massacred. 1984, the Sikh community was massacred, and that was again done by the Congress party men, and a lot of people have gone inside. They are behind the bars now. And every day Dalit community gets killed. Every day, not single day gets missed out. You know, in India, I'm talking about India. If you happen to see North India, South India, everywhere, and you have the militant struggle in India at the moment, and they happen to be called as the Naxalites. And these Naxalites, they go on killing the military men, the Indian military men, and they're almost in the coastal parts, and they are in the parts of Andhra Pradesh and elsewhere. They are in thousands, and they are having guns in their hands, and they are the major threat for now. If you want to talk about terrorism, the Naxalites are the major threat for Indian political system. So we have all of these things happening at the same time. We have all of these things which are happening at the same time. And at the same time, we are having the Muslims are also being persecuted. The Muslims are also being oppressed. So it's a very complicated situation. The Hindus themselves are not in a position to unite at one go and say, like, yes, we are going to kill the minorities. That is not the mindset of the entire majority in India, because they are fragmented in reality. But the real amazing thing is that you have BJP coming to power twice at continuously from 2014 and then 2019. How did they make it? 5 years, and then now they're going to continue and finish another 5 years. How did they make it? It's very simple. They have 30% of votes which are fixed. The right-wing votes is 30%, you can say, and the 70% of those Indians are not going to vote for BJP. Yet BJP comes to power. So what does that say? That says these 70% members are not working under one leadership, and they are not working under one party. They are fragmented. The Muslims are fragmented into so many parts. If you were to see, even in Kashmir, the BJP had an alliance with Mehbooba, Mufti Mehbooba. And you can understand, without that, without BJP having an alliance, they cannot be having any say in Kashmir for quite a long time, until when she cut off ties with BJP. So these are all the challenges. We are having a lot of political problems. We are having social related problems, and I do understand Muslims are having problem, and genocide is a possibility. But let me tell you, as Sister Shamshad rightly put across, Indian Muslims are the highest minority in the world. Highest minority in the world. Our population is much greater than Saudi Arabia's entire Muslim population. You can imagine. Our population is greater than the Pakistan population and Bangladesh population. So what is this size? This size, just imagine if this size of population is going through genocide, the repercussions are not going to be so easy. The direct consequence of this is to replace the existing political system. And believe me, that is the thing which is that is the thing which is going to happen if at all they make a mistake of implementing the genocide strategy. It's not going to work, I'm telling you. And they are also very much aware. They don't want to push to that kind of situation, because they know once that happens, they will lose control over the entire subcontinent, because Muslims actually are not so weak in India. A lot number of people, ulama, they get training here in Deoband, and they go across the world and they're serving. And there are a lot of intelligent people here. If you're talking about engineers, doctors, and whatnot, people serving in military, people serving in police department, judges, and everybody, we are all very much well knit within the mainstream. So they would not make that mistake. They would not make, if they make that mistake again, there would be another system which would replace the existing political system. So I'm giving you a lot of things in a very what to say, I'm putting a lot of things in a shell. I'm not going to disclose or spill the beans because we don't want to speak about war times at a time when there is treaty between communities. And of course, when there is a wartime situation, there is a different tone, there's a different swagger on the street, all that would accompany, and that is something which would be guided by the people of knowledge. But as of now, we are sticking to the constitutional means of getting our rights, and we are also, engaging in political strategies and media, and all of these things is there. But what I fear, again, what I fear, I just want to take one more minute and say, like a Brazilian thinker, Freire, he said, what I fear is that those people who are being oppressed today would become the oppressors of tomorrow. So that is a very big fear, because when you have a community which is being oppressed, and the repercussions would be almost the same. It would be the tit for tat, and the mob culture does not have brains. It's just that once things go out of control, people can go to do any nonsense, and nobody's going to be looking into the scriptures. Nobody's going to be looking into Quran or Hadith, or because mob that is left to themselves and which is out of control, that can become a very severe havoc in the society. So I fear on both the sides things may go wrong, and we are trying to talk about peace, we're trying to talk about justice, we're trying to bring people together, engaging with people of knowledge. All of these things are happening, yet we have a lot of challenges in-house. If I'm talking about the Muslim community of India, we have too many things to work on. I think over a period of time that we are going to sensitize this community, and over a period of time we all reform and we can become better people, and good days are going to come back. I mean, that's what I believe in. Trying to be optimistic.
Well, inshallah, we hope so. But Sister Shamshad, looking at the current situation that is playing out in India, and we're talking about the Constitution. The Constitution is just a piece of paper. In fact, a few weeks ago, I did a program on India's Independence Day, and the Constitution talks about we the people. Which people are we talking about? And this, for me, is a critical question, considering that the Constitution can have, every right. It can have all the flowery language. It can have basically everything contained in it. But when institutions do not respect the Constitution, when politicians don't respect the Constitution, when the police don't respect the Constitution and guarantee security, when the judicial system does not respect the Constitution, where does this leave, people like Bilkis Banu, like all the other people that have been massacred over a period of time?
Yeah, Brother Inayet, very, very valid point. I want to thank Sheikh, because I understand that he has to speak in veiled terms. I understand, because it's part of what I was trying to say. There isn't that exact freedom of expression. But I understand, and he's painted a very compliant picture of what the community of India should be. We understand that. We've seen it when we discussed at length the situation in Kashmir and what's expected from them and what they're supposed to be doing. So we understand that. But at the end of the day, until you do not have the power to change the narrative that's going around by the structures of the state, and they act with impunity against ordinary unarmed civilians just because they belong to a certain group, then we have a problem. And that is where we come in, Brother Inayet, because that's where we have to speak out to the international community and say, take a closer look. At this point, I also want to give credit to the great ulama that had suffered immensely during British rule. It was not just Hindus and other nationalities that fought against the British occupation, but a large number of them, even the key leaders in many of these resilient movements, were from the Muslim community. And I think there's a saying that from Chandni Chowk to Delhi, there was not a single tree that didn't have an alim that was burnt or hanged to death. So just to bring a bit of history, so these are lessons that we need to learn. But the narrative that's being pushed needs to be challenged. It needs to be dissected. It needs to be dismantled. It needs to be dissolved, because that is placing the Muslim on a very weak limb. especially if you have, as you said now, the judiciary. And I just want to bring to the fore that some of Bilkis Banu's supporters, one or two have been killed, the others have been silenced. The judiciary is now in the other foot. So there's a lot of things that are happening that the world is turning a blind eye to, and that we should not ignore. And I'm glad that civil society, as Sheikh said, mentioned that they're talking about it. It should be spoken about, because once you don't, then it becomes a problem. I also want to say, he spoke about so many fringe groups that are there. I also want to say that the BJP is like an occupying force, unfortunately. And the way they're conducting themselves like a mafia manner, the world is witnessing every day more and more of it. And the more brutal the so-called oppression, the more fringe and the more isolated kind of fringe groups are going to come to the fore. And that's a fact. People ask about, for example, like ISIS. I know, for example, which ISIS are you talking about? The one created by Russians, the one created by Europe, the one created by America. But there is a one that's created generically. But the more brutal the occupation, then expect the more fringe and more extreme groups to come. So that's a political fact, and it is a terrible situation that before it gets there, it needs to be solved. So I'm not there to speak about all those other groups. We're talking about what is happening in India. That is, it's happening on a daily basis. The killings of Muslims, the torture of Muslims, the mental torture of Muslims, physical torture of Muslims, and Christians as well at the same time. This kind of stupidity that's going around, that if you carrying beef, for example, that you should be killed. I mean, these kinds of things may be looking small, but this is the making of a genocide. And as much as we say it's not like that, remember what happened in Russia under Stalin. Remember what happened in Nazi Germany. We are just saying that from the lessons learned in history, from where we're coming from, we're seeing what's going to happen, and it needs to stop before it gets there. Bilkis Banu's case is a pathetic case. Now, in South Africa, Brother Inayet, if something like that happened, I think there will be protests across the country, massive protests across the country. Because the honor of a woman in South Africa, we may be having lots of crime, but it doesn't go unnoticed. And we do have acknowledgements of women fighting these cases and men fighting the cases. We need a kind of response from the people. And I'm not saying the Muslims have to do it, but you need to make friends in other communities. You rightly said, you have a very diverse community. You have lots of friends, it means, in the diverse community, where you can enlist their support in witnessing what is going on and talk against it. Because if you don't do this, you're all alone. And that is exactly what genocidal tendencies do. They tend to isolate a group based on some flimsy narrative that really makes no sense. One can even argue that under the Mughal Empire, India was at its peak. So there's an alternative view of history. So these kinds of narratives must also be pushed. And partition was not something just from one side, it's from all sides. It was to oust the British, and the RSS was not part of raising the tricolour at that time. They didn't want to be part of the independence of India because they had a different agenda. Who they were created by needs to be questioned, because there is lots of narratives as to who created the RSS to create instability. It was a divide and rule policy for till the end of time, and that's what we're seeing with the agenda to annihilate the Muslim rule or Muslim power or whatever it is. But day by day, you are seeing some kind of atrocity against Muslim communities. Maybe they say when you're in it, you can't see it, but when you're outside, you see more because you get a global picture. But I'm saying that you have a lot of pluses that you mentioned, alhamdulillah, Sheikh. Now is the time to enlist the support of all those people by talking to them and saying, this is not the India we want. Because something happens to one community, it's going to have a ripple effect on the rest of all the communities. And you want a peaceful India. But I just want to close by saying that there is a very important hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we often tend to forget, that when the Mahdi comes, he's going to liberate Hind first. And there's a reason for that. Because for a very long time now, we are seeing what's happening in Kashmir, what's been happening in Gujarat, what's been happening in other parts of India, and now Rajasthan. It's growing. It's like a cancer that's growing that needs to be stopped from the nucleus, And that's the time, that's the period that we are in, inshallah. That we will recognize what's going on, because if we don't, then we're on the wrong side of history. And we don't want to be on the wrong side of history, inshallah.
Yes. And also, Sheikh Umar Sharif, the key issue here is accountability. And at this point in time, nobody is holding the leadership in India. Nobody is holding people like Narendra Modi accountable for the crimes, for the genocide. In fact, it's actually gone the other way. And it's sad that even in the Muslim world, Muslim countries are welcoming people like Modi with open arms. They are honoring the man. They are giving him the highest awards as well. And obviously, we know the reason why. It's all in the interest of the economics and the economic relationship, and India being a powerhouse as an economy as far as many of these Arab states are concerned. So the key issue here is this will continue. Sister Shamshad says, it can easily spiral into other areas around India, and it will continue in the absence of no one being held accountable.
Well, I must bring in a couple of insights into this. Modi, if you were to see Modi, why he was not put in the jail, and is he a convict? No, he's not a convict. He went through the process of trial, and a lot of things, as per the court, there was a lot of hearing, and finally, due to no proofs which were presented for his involvement in 2002 riots, he was not considered as a convict. So therefore, he has come out clean technically. What was true, Allah knows best. But for anybody to be made a convict, there has to be proofs on ground. Of course, there were secondary references wherein some people were talking in front of media during the sting operations, saying that Modi gave a nod to do whatever we please, and we ended up doing so many things. That's what Babu Bajrangi, he happened to say. But all of these things did not stand before the court of law, and he is not a convict. And after that incident, after he became the prime minister, a lot of people have started to engage in discussions with him. And if I have to say, one Mr. Zafar Sareshwala, who had raised voice against Modi, who had taken this matter to the international court, and who was behind getting Modi banned in the Western countries. But he extended a kind of a relationship with Modi and started to present Quran and started to engage with discussions to say that, Islam is for peace and we Muslim community want to have peace. And all of these things are going through. And now Modi is in one direction, RSS is in another direction, and it is very complicated. The Hindu Mahasabha is in totally different direction. If you're talking about Veer Savarkar, he was leading Hindu Mahasabha, and RSS was another organization which was started by Hedgewar. Now, these are all having their own problems from within. They are not having unity. There is no consensus. So we understand this in a very deeper manner because we engage in discussions and we know what's happening here. They are not on a mission together. They are divided. And we Muslims, are we together? Even we are divided. We are also divided. We are not together. There's so much of complication within ourselves for leadership and a lot of things. Even political scenario, it's not like black and white. No, there are 56 shades of gray in between. So nothing is clear at the moment. All that what we do at this point in time is to raise voice against injustice and talk about the right things, what we have to do. And then as Sister Shamshad said, we have to kill the wrong narrative. We have to kill the wrong narrative. That's very important. To say that Muslims of the past were not people who worked for the devastation of this country. They have worked for the building of this country, building of the nation, and they have contributed enough. And this narrative has to go on. And this has to happen consistently. It is not one-day job. And by the grace of Allah, from 1991 to 2002, things were getting better. And from 2002 to what is today, it is getting better. But there are certain untoward incidents which is prevalent in the North India. The North India was always, as I was telling you, there's so much of atrocities which happens against the Dalit, so much of things happens against the Sikh community, and so many things happen against the Muslims. and even against the Brahmins. Under the UP Sarkar, that is Yogi Adityanath, Brahmins were executed in the open and they were burnt alive, and that is recorded in the recent political scenario. I'm talking about Brahmins, the highest caste that you can talk about. And these are the things which are happening. The Brahmins are not happy with the UP government. This is what is happening internally. But generally, we tend to see that the Brahmins are the ones behind all of these things. Not all Brahmins are together on this as well. So this is very complicated, as I said, Sheikh Inayet. But I want to talk about one very important thing about Mahdi. We were talking about Mahdi coming and liberating. The Hadith goes to say that India would open for Islam. There will be Fatah, and the delegation from here will go to meet Mahdi. So it's the other way around. India independently, it will come to victory for Islam, and it can happen democratically or militarily. That depends on how Allah wishes. Because when people start to embrace Islam on their own, and when they ask for an Islamic system, and that is also considered as opening for Islam. And of course, we believe in those ahadith. So we will, inshallah, go as a delegation and meet Mahdi, inshallah. That is also days to come. And we are just preparing the ground for that, inshallah. That's what I can say.
Well, inshallah, Sister Shamshad, I see the time is just gone 8 o'clock, and time has actually flown, and I don't think we will scratch the surface. There's just so much more we can talk about, but I have got another program on after this, and just, perhaps some other important issues that possibly I may not have covered, or if you'd just like to basically wind down with some closing comments on what we have been talking about.
I'm very glad that Sheikh has taken out the point that I mentioned, that the narrative needs to change, because it's a very, very dangerous narrative for Muslims, in particular, especially if you're picking the Mughal Empire and the petition, because it refers to both of them refer to the Muslim community and the anchor of the Muslim community. So it is a very well thought out narrative against Muslims. And we're seeing what's playing out every day. We cannot be ignored. It cannot be brushed under the carpet and say it's really nothing, 1 year, 1 day. One is too much. 2 a day is too much. And more than that is genocide. So we need to understand that this cannot be swept under the carpet, because, as you said, India has witnessed a lot of brutalities. It doesn't mean that more must come. It means you need to avoid the future one that's coming. So I think it should be a heads up for the Muslims in the country that you have a lot of energy within you. And as you said, you've got a plan in action. I think now is the time to put that plan into action, as well as to be serious about it, and then to engage with your other communities. You said there are so many diverse communities. Now is the time to talk about it and to say this is wrong. And inshallah, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this will continue. I make dua for the protection of women in Kashmir, the women in India, Bilqis Banu, etc., and the many other Bilqis Banus that we haven't spoken about, that carries on a daily basis. We've seen the beatings of Muslim communities at large, and nothing of this goes unnoticed by us. But I think the people of India need to come together, find common ground, because I think the test for the Ummah always has been to find that unity. If you can't do it now, then there's going to be a problem. But if we do have hope, as Sheikh has spoken about the hadith, well, we hope that that will be the instant, the situation, because we know that the oppression in India for us, from the outside looking in, is unbearable. And as Muslims, we are one body, and we feel the pain. But we also feel the pain for the people of other religions, like the Christians who have been tortured and burnt alive. I've seen photos of that and videos of it, where young girls are burnt alive for coming out of the church, etc. That is not humanity. That is inhumane. This inhumanity, this insanity, it needs to stop. And it can only stop by the people of India. Allah will not help you until you start helping yourself. Allah will not change your condition until you change your condition. So with that, I wish the people of India success, especially the Muslims, unity, as well as strength, as well as courage, which they have shown in history once again, to fight this demons that are rising from different parts of India. As I said, what happens in Gujarat becomes a microcosm of what's going to happen in broader India. And we hope that will be stopped and nipped in the bud before it gets any worse. Let's hope in the next discussion we can talk about that positivity, inshallah.
Well, inshallah, Jazakallah khairan so much for that, Shamshad. Brother Umar Sharif, just some final thoughts from you.
Yeah, I just want to say some few things, inshallah, ta'ala, very short. I want to bring into notice about the Hui Muslims of China, as they are the Chinese Muslims there, and I happen to read about the history of Hui, and they are safe there, and there is no attack against them, and the Uyghurs have a problem there. So I was studying deeply into this as to historically what is the references we can get through. So I just want to say very short. Historically, the people in China, they were finding it initially difficult to have another race, mostly Turkish and Arabs living amongst them. So they didn't know how to accommodate them. And for that, they said, we will give our daughters who happens to be non-Muslim Chinese women, and you get married to them and you make them Muslims, you learn our culture, you learn our language, and be with us. We have no problem with that. So I want to bring into notice that whenever there is a separatist mentality amongst the Muslims or anybody for that matter, there is friction within the society. We as Indian Muslims, we have a very important role of accommodating the local culture and at the same time practicing the Islamic culture, so that we don't look like outsiders, we don't become secluded from the masses. But that in itself is a very big art, and there is a lot of science involved. There's a lot of history which is involved with that. And once that formula is with us, inshallah ta'ala, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, when we are going to adopt that in India, inshallah, most of the frictions would get dissolved, and we would have harmony back into life. And alongside, as Sister rightly said, we need to bring in the right narrative, and it should be based on truth, and it should be based on justice. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah brings peace to all of us here, and Allah brings peace to all of you. And people from South Africa, as you rightly said, we are one body, one Muslim community, brotherhood is there. I thank both of you for having so much of empathy and sympathy for all of us here. May Allah bless you. May Allah bless you and your family. Barakallahu feekum.
Ameen. Jazakallah khairan so much for that. And Ameen to your du'as, Sheikh Umar Sharif.
Ameen.
And also our du'as are with you, our du'as are with the people of India, particularly those who are oppressed. And inshallah, as you mentioned, justice will be served. Sister Shamshad, Jazakallah to you as well for taking time out with us this evening here in Salam Media. And also to you, Sheikh Umar Sharif. All the best to both of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
Well, that brings us to the end of part one of tonight's discussion on Wednesday nights with myself, Inayet. Wadee. We'll come back and we're going to get feedback out from the United Ulama Council of South Africa. They had a meeting with 45 different bodies right across the entire country, and this is of extreme importance to the Muslim Ummah. And we will be joined by Maulana Abdul Khalik Ali, who is the president of the United Ulama Council of South Africa, and together with Brother Ashraf Parker, who is a law expert. And we will get back after this discussing the strategic stakeholder meeting that UPSA has had with a number of bodies.